This is the unrestricted free agent.
The Jimbo Fisher stuff. Were you in the room the other day when he threw?
I was. Part of the reason we had so much fun beating Clemson was because we used to talk a lot of shit to them and they couldn't handle it.
You feel fine, but your hands are shaking.
Coach Spurrier couldn't give a damn.
I want to take these athletes and mentor them.
Why can't the Gamecocks win at the SEC tournament?
So sunny all the time, so hot.
Too sunny.
Too sunny.
Fans are going to be fans, and people who understand the sport are going to talk sports.
With some weird dynamics.
It's going to be painful, but I think at the end of the day, we'll be stronger people for it.
Good morning. Woo, it's been a painful start to my morning. A lot of sneezing in the garage today. Try to work through that. Hope your Thursday morning is off to a little better start than mine. Also coming off of just brutal kid baseball practices, trying to help coach pitch all-star team this time of year. Got the 7-year-old out there. Woo, that is something. So happy to be here with you this morning. We got tons to talk about. Let's start with some of you. DC looks like relatively new to the show. DC, good to see you, man. Says, I found your channel last week. Glad you landed on your feet. Looking forward to listening to your insight again. I'll try to give you some insight. I don't know if we'll have anything worth listening to, but we'll try this morning. Anthony says, good morning to all the UFAs out there. Hola. Craig goes internationally this morning. Mark is in with a howdy. Welcome in DC. The water is just fine. All you guys listening on the YouTube live stream or watching on the YouTube live stream, I should say, we're up and rolling on Twitter, Facebook as well for the video portion, Podbean for audio only, and we got to start. We got to start with rich guys, as we typically do in sports, right? Professional sports for sure. Dustin Johnson, Dutch Fork High School alum, Coastal Carolina alum. $150 million was the report I saw last night, is what he's going to earn by hopping over on that live series. Also seen $125 million. I mean, it's $25 million, kind of a big deal. Hello to you too, Jason, as well. But seen those reports last night, so take them for what they're worth, right? Dustin hasn't commented on this. The only comment from his camp coming from his agent, basically saying this was an opportunity that his family could not turn down. Talked about it a little bit yesterday. Mentioned it would be real easy to get up here and say, what are you doing? And where's the loyalty and the whole thing? And this was before I had any idea. I don't know what I was thinking yesterday when I knew he was going to make money off of this deal. But it wasn't anywhere close to $150 million. I was thinking 50? I don't know. I don't think if you would have said, well, I think he's going to get paid about $50 million to do this, I would have said, I think that's a little high. That's a little ridiculous, right? 100. Let's just say even $125 million. Mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. And we're going to talk to Meredith Taylor on this, former Gamecock golfer. So been in the circles, right, around Columbia golf for a while. That certainly included DJ and his family roots and the whole thing. Craig says DJ's net worth is $50 million. So if they're tripling that, it's kind of hard to turn down. Now, other stuff comes with this, right? RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, has been a sponsor of DJ since back in 2018. That's why he's ended up playing down in Hilton Head the last several years. The event that they've sponsored, the RBC Heritage, they also do the Canadian Open, I think. And so they announced that both he and Graham McDowell, who's also playing in this Live series, no longer affiliated with their sponsorship. That sponsorship is done. But if you're Dustin Johnson, so what? Goodbye. I have no idea what that sponsorship was worth. I assume it got maybe close to 7 figures, maybe even more, maybe multiple. I mean,
Max, it would be $10 million, and I think that would be an absolutely ridiculous number. But I have a hard time talking about this because of the numbers involved, right? $150 million. And good morning to you too, Hope. Does anybody blame Dustin Johnson? And my perspective on this from yesterday is this is a separate deal than Phil Mickelson, right? You got golf and you got Tiger, right? Oh, maybe you got golf and then you got Tiger, right? Because he's kind of bigger than golf in general. You got golf and then you got Phil. And then you got on every other top level player with Dustin Johnson, I think, very fairly, even though we're completely biased being South Carolinians. He's right at the top of that list. He's the headliner. There's no doubt about it. What Rory said yesterday, I'm not really impressed with that field at the old Live Series. 42 guys have been announced, and far and away, Dustin is the headliner. Some other guys on there, international names, right? Like Charles Schwartzel, who's won the Masters, Lee Westwood, a great player, but getting on up there in age. Louis Oosthuizen, fantastic player. Sergio Garcia, really, really good players. But I think it's fair to say that Dustin Johnson, he's the only former world number one of all those guys, I believe. He's 13th, I think, now in the official world golf rankings. And at 38 years old, mentioned it yesterday, it's got to be on the backslide there of the career, you would think. Still some good years in front of him. The chance, I believe it's something like $60 million more he could make in this 8-event series that is planned. If you won all of them, if you played as well as possible, and he's got as good a chance as any to win. Now, no one's got to run through and win them all. So this and the next issue to talk about is where we start this morning, and it's an odd place in multiple ways. The other big story coming out last night, Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper, his real estate company files bankruptcy as an absolute direct result of the massive cluster that was the failed Rock Hill training facility. I guess the real estate company, for some reason, did this in Delaware federal court, and the documents that Joe Person was a big part of writing this story for The Athletic. I think he partnered with Kaplan Business, someone who works for more of a sports business outlet. So they get into all the numbers and the whole thing. I was reading this thing. I was like, man, Joe's good. We had Joe on the show maybe week number 2, I think, to talk about the Panthers draft and the whole deal. Might have been week number 1. And I go way back with Joe from his time covering the Gamecocks with the state. But as the story reads, from the court documents, that I guess a $100 million to $500 million is what this company owes, and that's about how much they have in the bank, is how I read this thing. And so now David Tepper, who is the richest owner in the NFL, $16.6 billion or something is his net worth, somewhere in there, maybe 16.4, whatever it is. But because his company is separate, obviously, from him, because it's separate from the Panthers, even though it was this was all with the Panthers. That's the only reason we're talking about this, right? Billionaires file bankruptcy with their companies frequently. I would never talk about that on the show. It sounds like two things that I have no interest in talking about, right? Billionaires and bankruptcy. But when it's tied directly into the Carolina Panthers owner and the team's proposed training facility that was going to be in the state of South Carolina, that just went up in smoke because Tepper basically said that Rock Hill wasn't giving him the money they had promised. Rock Hill said, no, it's Tepper not doing the things he promised us. Just a mess. An absolute mess that ends with one of the richest dudes in all of sports. One of, if not the, right? I guess there's probably some soccer owner out there, or we go right back to Dustin Johnson, right? Saudi Arabian backers of this Live Golf Series probably have some more money than David Tepper. but very few. So one of the richest guys out there files bankruptcy for his company. So these are two issues, right? That on the surface, I say, Dustin Johnson turning his back on the PGA Tour is one way to read the headline, right? To play in this Live Series, which the tour has said, nope, our PGA Tour members can't do it. They risk being suspended if they do it. And almost to a man, all American golfers, and there are a handful more that have joined Dustin Johnson in this thing, but none of them anywhere close to the reputation of the former world number one golfer, major winner, and the whole thing. So the easy way to do it is to say, kind of like the Phil Mickelson story, right? Oh, where's your loyalty? Where's your concern about legacy? And again, going to have Meredith Taylor on, and she nailed this thing before Tiger did his press conference pre-PGA Championship and talked about the importance of legacy to him. But I think that's the thing that we might be missing here, is that not playing on the PGA Tour isn't going to keep Dustin Johnson from playing in majors, because they're not actually affiliated with the PGA Tour. And so that's going to be a really interesting development here. To me, this is relatively easy decision for Dustin Johnson, like you mentioned. You triple your net worth. Wow. I mean, how do you turn that down if you're Dustin Johnson? Right, Kirk says you'd have to win 50 U.S. Opens to make that kind of money. And we all understand that probably as much of Dustin Johnson's money has been made off of endorsements, and that's the way it goes and with all professional athletes, right? The PGA Tour certainly deserves a bunch of credit for giving him the platform to cash in on that name, image, and likeness kind of stuff that we talk about all the time in college sports. So the question to me comes down to loyalty in both of these situations. And to be very clear, David Tepper has done nothing illegal here that we know of. Filing bankruptcy is not illegal. Creating a company that's separate from yourself is what anyone who's gone into business for themselves does. That's the first thing, right? I don't know much about business, but even I know that before I started this show, I had to go and create an LLC just for business purposes, right? And separate business and personal. So that $16 billion that David Tepper has made has nothing to do with the real estate company that was in charge that has now filed bankruptcy because of all this mess in Rock Hill. So I'm torn on both of these. And I want to make sure that you understand my perspective here. It's not simple black and white. But just from the knee-jerk black and white way that my brain works, playing in that Live Series from Dustin Johnson doesn't feel like the right choice, right? Like maybe the ethical one. That might not be the right word. And certainly when you are the richest owner in sports, this entire Rock Hill thing doesn't feel right. It doesn't seem like David Tepper has been ethical in this. But from the business perspective, I get it. And certainly filing bankruptcy, to how I understand it, again, very elementary. It seems like he has done this so that the people that he owes money to, that his company owes money to, that have done work for this facility, that they will only be paid if a court orders it to be done. And in these filings, he says there have been some illegitimate claims of money owed. And I'm sure that happens too on the other side, right? Anybody who's ever worked with the contractor can understand that sometimes there is shadiness on that side of it too. So these issues are certainly not black and white. And I think it's really easy to go the wag your finger, how dare you? You should do this. But what would we do? What would you do? You had a chance to make $150 million. Is there any loyalty owed, I guess, is my more pointed question to those of us who have followed Dustin Johnson's career. I consider myself a Dustin Johnson fan. Loved watching his career basically bloom before our eyes, occur right before our eyes, and him to go to the number one ranked golfer in the world from Dutch Fork High School, Coastal Carolina. It's pretty cool. Really cool. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. I felt like our entire area lucky to see that happen and to kind of claim him, and not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination. And certainly there have been some missteps along the way that he would admit to. But it's a really human story. I feel like Dustin Johnson is a guy out there that I think is easily relatable because he's made his mistakes, but man, he has achieved so much and done it most of the way in a way that I can pull for, if that makes sense. And now to go be the headline guy for this series from where he is right now at 38 years old, I have a hard time wagging my finger at him and saying, how dare you, where's your loyalty and the whole thing. Like, you've already played on the PGA Tour for how long? 16 years? You've done that. Why not try this, especially if you can go make the massive amount of money? So again, like I said yesterday, I don't have a big problem with this at all from Dustin Johnson's perspective. Phil Mickelson, his issue, or I think most of our issue with him, some of the comments he had to say just about the Saudi Arabian financial backers from this tour, from this event series, right? And that also goes into it from the Dustin Johnson perspective, right? But I think we got to be very careful to just completely paint the brush of any group being all bad because of some reports out there, some incidents that have happened in the past, and the whole thing, for sure. Now, you also got to consider the entire perspective, the entire image, what you're doing now, if you're Dustin Johnson, is basically giving legitimacy to this series, this event series, upping the legitimacy for sure. Greg Norman already certainly being the face of it helps with that legitimacy. All the money attached to it, boom, that's instant legitimacy in a lot of ways. But Dustin Johnson takes that to the next level, and I would imagine, and I know he gets a bad rap for being low key and his personality and the whole thing, but I'm sure he and his agent and the inner circle, they sat down and they had to weigh out the pros and cons, right? A bunch of money, which multiple people have been offered, right? Jack Nicklaus came out and said he was offered $100 million to basically do what Greg Norman's done, to be the face of this thing, to promote it, to recruit other big-time golfers in there. And he turned it down because he said he felt loyal to the PGA Tour. Basically what he started back in the day, he and Arnold Palmer helped become legit, and he couldn't do that. But Jack Nicklaus is much different than Dustin Johnson, much different than Phil Mickelson even. And from the Dustin Johnson perspective, again, this doesn't change my perspective, but I do think the money attached, I mean, it does make me give him even more leeway for making the decision, I think. If you're just looking at it from any kind of ethical standpoint, odd. It's complicated, let's say. The Tepper thing as well, this is not going to go away for a long, long time. Business-wise, you're looking at this from a business perspective, obvious move, right? And you don't get to be an NFL owner, certainly don't get to be the richest NFL owner without making smart business moves, without being a smart business guy. Except now you zoom out from this business move and you're the owner of the Carolina Panthers. You rely on fans to buy tickets. That's how you make your money, right? So when you do this, you make a promise, right? You make a deal, and then the deal doesn't work out, and now you file bankruptcy to avoid paying any more than you are legally required to pay. As the richest owner in the NFL, it doesn't send a good signal to your fans, does it? I mean, maybe most of you are just more business savvy than me and you understand it, but this was the right move. This is the move you got to make. And to do it any other way would just be bad business. And so you give a free pass to Tepper on this thing. I don't. I understand it, but that doesn't mean you get a free pass in my mind when part of your job as an NFL owner with your team and your fan base is to have that relationship with your fan base, to cultivate that relationship with the fan base, the community. So, you can take out all the economic positive impact that was promised to the Rock Hill / South Carolina side of things. Take all that out. That's bad enough. But then now add in this and the perception already of an ultra rich owner is, fans can deal with that, right? Great. You go pay a rising star in college football to come be the head coach of your franchise. Great. You can do that. It's great to have a bunch of money to work with as an NFL owner. You want to have an owner that can do that because you think that would help your franchise, right? Well, Matt Rule hasn't helped the franchise move forward at all as the coach. So problem number one, I would say, with David Tepper as the owner of the Carolina Panthers to begin with. Then you get this. You got a mess right off I-77 a few miles before the North Carolina border that was supposed to bring economic prosperity to an area, to the Rock Hill area. That's not going to happen. Now you kind of just multiply that. You double down on that and say, and make me pay. We will pay what you make us pay. It's certainly not a good look. And I think what it does, ultimately, if you win, no one cares, right? We all understand that in professional sports. Sam Darnold somehow has a resurgence, not even a resurgence, right? Would it just be a surgence? Is that a word? Sam Darnold figures out how to be a good NFL quarterback for the first time in his career this year. Christian McCaffrey is that guy who we've seen before, one of, if not the best player in the NFL, most dynamic for sure. The defense gets even better, and that offensive line, shored up by the first-round draft pick out of NC State, somehow starts to look a lot like those offensive lines did for years that helped Carolina get to a couple of Super Bowls, and then nobody cares. Absolutely no one cares. Or certainly you care a lot less. And Matt Rule somehow figures it out, right? His foundation and the culture he feels like he's been building upon the last several years takes hold, and somehow the Carolina Panthers turn themselves into the southern version of the New England Patriots. Then everybody's great with David Tepper, right? Great guy. He did what he had to do. He's a businessman. We would have done the same thing. But let's snap back to reality. Barring this miraculous best case scenario, I think that the patience of Panthers fans, the patience of a casual Panthers fan, which I think is almost all of them. There's some diehards out there. Don't get me wrong. It is the NFL still. But And maybe we're biased coming at it from the South Carolina perspective where it's much more college football driven, but the pressure or the tolerance, I think, for not winning is dropped even more, or the intolerance, I should probably say, for struggling and losing goes up that much more, a couple levels when you read this headline, because that's another, I think that's just an American thing, right? Maybe not jealousy, but intolerance for ultra rich people doing things that we don't view as the right thing, right? Doing anything that hurts the little guy. When Goliath wins, we aren't happy. It is not Goliath versus David, right? It's David versus Goliath for a reason. And our country seems to be one that loves the underdog story and the whole thing. This is the exact opposite. And it's kind of close with the Dustin Johnson story too, except with our local connection to him and his, I want to say likability. I don't know if that's it necessarily, because he's kind of a mercurial is the word that pops in my head. A guy that I think has a lot of different perceptions out there, and I think I'm totally biased on the way that I look at Dustin Johnson. But and then you add in that number, right? Wow, what a crazy number. So you got those couple of stories going on today. Would love to hear some of your comments there on who do you. I think Dustin Johnson is easier to identify, right? Easier to say, hey, man, yeah, I would do that for sure. But I think we would all do the same thing that David Tepper is doing as well from a business perspective, knowing that's the smart business play. Except I would think you could figure out a better way to do it, or maybe have come out before this story broke, before you even filed it in federal court, and say, here's what I'm going to do to kind of offset this bad PR. Here's what we're going to create in Rock Hill to offset the disaster that just happened. We're going to donate however many $1 million to a Boys and Girls Club, or create the Carolina Panthers fill in the blank charity or community center, or the whole thing. I mean, you don't feel that obligation at all. You don't surely understand public relations well enough to get that would have been a wise move to, or maybe you think it would be a hollow move, right? And people would do the math real quick and say $800 million is the price tag that was put on the proposed economic boom that was to come to the area, and now they're spending $1 million, right, on a dinky rec center or something like that. Maybe that's why you don't do that. I don't know. But I do not envy Matt Rule, Sam Darnold, and that's I think the disappointing or frustrating part about this, from where I'm sitting, is that this move by the owner just goes to shrink the patience of fans with players not performing, with the team not performing, which comes down to players not performing, right? And that's not real fair, but that's what it is. And I get it. He's got deep pockets and signs the checks and the whole thing, and you got to probably call him Mr. Tepper around the Carolina Panthers facilities. You got to know you don't certainly want to bite off the hand that feeds you, but he didn't do his organization any favors for sure. So interesting big-time money stories coming out yesterday for sure. The opposite of that is the Gamecock football news that wide receiver Jalen Brooks, the former Wingate transfer, back now with the Gamecock football program. No details really coming out on this thing. I believe it was Ben Portnoy from the state who first reported it, and it was confirmed by Gamecock Central's Mike Yuva. This is a guy that came in at a tough time and had a tough time getting eligible, because he didn't just transfer from Wingate. He went over to, I think it was Tarleton State out in Texas, and never played there, but was part of their program. And then it took a while for the NCAA to clear him under Will Muschamp there. I think it was basically halfway through that first season. Hasn't put up any kind of eye-popping numbers. I think Gamecock fans were hopeful that he was going to be kind of the deep threat, and he's had a couple of chances that didn't go his way, but now going to be back with Gamecock football. The Gamecock wide receiver depth going into the 2022 season on paper looks so much better than it has even the last few years, maybe since Deebo Samuel was here. But what you see with a couple of transfers in Antoine Wells leading the way at James Madison, Corey Rucker from Arkansas State, added to the type of year that Josh Vann had last year. It was excellent. It was an excellent year that Josh Vann had. Didn't see it coming based on what we had seen before. I was surprised, flat out surprised, but kind of seen this before as well from a couple of Gamecock receivers who had the opportunity to step up and just took full advantage. Now you got Brooks providing depth is basically where I see him on the depth chart going in. Instead of being asked to somehow be a savior of an offense that just wasn't working and didn't have much downfield passing in years past. Yeah, respectable, I think is the way to put it there, RL. Respectable numbers his last few games, but nothing that would make me think that he's going to get back in the starting lineup, because you got Xavier Legette as well, who looks, the word is to have taken that step to get in the rotation there. So top four guys, I would assume Josh Vann, Legette, and then the couple of transfers coming in Rucker and Wells. But will be interesting to see. It can't hurt that he's back with the program. I don't think from a depth standpoint, you got to have that. So let's get back to the top story real quick. And Dustin Johnson heading to that Live Series, going to bring in former Gamecock golfer Meredith Taylor on this to get a more qualified opinion. Meredith, thanks for joining us this morning. Office still looking good there with all the Gamecock gear.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. We're here to talk about the U.S. Open, right?
U.S. Women's Open, right? Sure. We got that going on this week as well. We'll get to it. But I wanted to get your initial reaction. We talked about Phil Mickelson and the mess that he was all a part of in the PGA Championship stuff last time you were here, and you nailed it, by the way.
Right.
You basically gave Tiger his script about legacy and the whole thing. Tiger did his press conference. Nice work. What do you think about Dustin Johnson hopping on this series?
This was a bit of a curveball, if I'm honest. When the field came out, I was anticipating the field to be basically what it looked like, other than DJ, guys that are probably on the tail end of their career, older guys that are probably not going to have the opportunity to win again on the PGA Tour. It made sense to me that those guys were on that list. DJ was a bit more of a curveball for me because I still think that he can win on the PGA Tour. So if I'm honest, I was kind of shocked to see his name there, but then you look at how much money it is and then you're not shocked at all. But it's also not really black and white either. And I think that's what people have missed, is it's a lot more nuanced than just, hey, I'm leaving for money. There's a lot more questions. And I haven't seen anything this morning, so forgive me if his team did come out with a statement. I haven't seen anything yet from DJ or his camp.
His camp only has said basically this was an opportunity he felt like he and his family couldn't turn down.
Okay. It's going to be interesting to see over the next several months what the kind of legal ramifications are, in my opinion. Does the PGA have a non-compete? Do his contractual obligations as far as the RBC? Just with my background, the more I started thinking about it, the more I started thinking about the breach of contract issues. So that stuff, I'll be interested to see how it plays out. I know it's really early, but to leave, when the commissioner of the PGA Tour had said, listen, if you leave, you're suspended and probably a lifetime ban from the PGA Tour. So it's a little more nuanced. I mean, I don't know. I mean, hypothetically, what if this Saudi league implodes next year? You can't come back to the PGA Tour, and your corporate sponsors are not going to welcome you with open arms again. So it's a little more nuanced than just, hey, he's leaving for money and it's generational wealth. And so there's a lot of things still to come, I think, out of this storyline.
No doubt. But when you say generational wealth, what's that number in my mind? That's like
I thought he already had. Let's be honest. I mean, where has his wealth come from? The PGA Tour,
sure,
corporate sponsors, brand sponsorships, club manufacturing deals.
But even as we say that, though, it didn't just come from the tour, right? It came from him winning on the tour. They didn't just give it to him.
100%, absolutely. But that did give him the platform to win and get the media attention that brings the dollars, that brings the corporate sponsors. And so, yeah, it's a little more nuanced than just, he's piecing out and going to get his money. You can't blame him for it. I get it. I understand both sides of the argument. But I'll be interested to see. A lot of people have said, well, he can still play the majors. I don't know about that, because they're all in conjunction with the PGA Tour. I understand the PGA of America runs the PGA Championship. The RNA runs the British Open. The USGA is the US Open, and Augusta National is Augusta National, right? And he's a former champion, and they take care of their former champions. They always get the invitation to come, and it's the fraternity of fraternities, the champions dinner at Augusta National. So this is all new to me. I have no idea
it's just
how this is going to play out.
It's new to us, right? And then even as you were talking about it, you're talking about non-competes and breach of contract. Certainly antitrust would have to come in, I would think, somewhere. The PGA is going to put up a stink, right? And they go in and they say, hey, don't let this guy play. And then I would imagine legal representation from Dustin Johnson will say, well, you can't do that. That's not how the world works. You can't just impose your will on everybody. Yeah, it's a mess.
I don't know. It's a mess.
As you talked about it, it seems to me like Dustin Johnson came to the conclusion that this move was going to be just going to outweigh everything that playing it safe, if you will, staying on that PGA Tour would have offered him certainly from a financial standpoint. But I mean, what's the worst that could happen here? He can't go play golf after this Saudi league implodes on the PGA Tour. Well, certainly you can just go play exhibitions, right? I mean, this is not the first time.
Let's be honest. He could leave right now and go down to Myrtle Beach and be on a boat. I mean, he's comfortable already at a point where he's got generational wealth at this point. So to go triple that.
Yeah, we got to stop right there. Okay, this comfortable, just my eyes popped out of my head when we said
I know.
Generational wealth. I thought might have been like $1 million. 1 million is what I was thinking. It's probably, I know for those of you who actually make money for a living, you're probably thinking, hey man, that's not generational wealth. It's probably more like 3 or 4 or something. I got no idea. But when you're talking about 150, like that is so mind-boggling to me that it seems that we would all be a bit disingenuous to wag our finger and say, how can you do this? How can you turn your back? How can you not be loyal kind of deal?
No, I understand. And I see both sides of it. But, having a background with working in the financial world, working with corporate sponsors on the player side, there's a lot more questions than answers at this point. So it's tough to, I mean, the thing that was kind of, I didn't like about this decision is the timing of, when you have a corporate sponsor that's been loyal to you and has allowed you to do what you do, and have no financial worries, like RBC has been for Dustin Johnson over many years, the contractual obligation would be to play in the RBC Heritage, which he's always going to play in. It's in South Carolina. That's our tournament. And then the RBC Canadian Open is next week. And they plan all year for that event. He is going to participate in that event. They plan their marketing around it. They do commercials around it. They put gobs of money into he's going to give his appearances, like all the things that come with being a brand ambassador that you were contractually obligated to do. And he up and leaves. And it doesn't seem like the right move. You know, when you look at it in that perspective, like he's just jumping ship and headed over to with the tournament being next week. I was like, man, that's a tough one for RBC to swap. But you know, this is all new to me. It's tough to. It's a lot more nuanced than just being black and white. That's for sure.
No doubt. And just to play devil's advocate, like their RBC hasn't done this out of the goodness of their heart because they really like DJ. They've done it because he's a valuable commodity for them.
Sure.
So they've used him in a business sense as much as he's used them. So
sure.
To me, this comes down, it's a lot like this David Tepper situation in Rock Hill. Like, that's the business move you do. You file bankruptcy. You don't pay more than a court makes you pay, right? The tricky part about that is now you actually have to turn around and smile at your fans and say, hey, come buy tickets and come support our team and the whole deal. That's not something that DJ has to do. All he's got to do is play golf. And I think if there's one thing that is universal across the board about Dustin Johnson is that he loves to play golf. And the other stuff, even though he has been that commodity and been that ambassador and the whole thing, I think he's kind of done it because he could. But I think we all realize, like, that ain't his thing, man. He just likes to go out there and hit it far and win money and then go back to doing, you know, what he would prefer to do and stay out of the limelight. And that's why I think this is so much different, Meredith, than the Phil Mickelson situation, where Phil seems to love the attention, right? And then he has his gambling stuff going on, and he's had the insider trading stuff and the whole deal. And then he said what he said about the Saudis. That's why it's so much different here. And man, I can see all kind of different perspectives here. Ultimately, I think I come to the conclusion in my mind that I don't blame Dustin Johnson a bit for doing this. Maybe it's the unrestricted free agent in me right now that says, hey, somebody's got to stand up to the man being the PGA Tour here, who tried to have everybody fall in line when competition came up. And I get that. That's what they had to do. But Dustin Johnson felt like he was in kind of a different category, and I think he is. The $150 million kind of shows it. You got a problem with that kind of mindset, it looked like?
I mean, I don't know if I have a problem with it, but I see the other side of it too. You know, looking at the PGA Tour and what has given him this platform to play golf for a living and to obviously follow the legends of Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Watson, the history and the legacy. I understand it's generational wealth and he's doing what's best for his family, so to speak. But then you're going to have to deal with the ramifications of that in terms of no FedEx Cup, no Ryder Cup, no, you're suspended, you're banned, your lifetime ban is something that I don't know. It's something that I probably, hopefully his team had sat down with him and said, hey, okay, you can do this, but here's what you're leaving behind.
No doubt. A lot of that is there. Do you think that's the right thing for the PGA Tour to do?
Yes.
Why do you think that severe ban out there is the right thing for them to do when golfers asked for exemptions here to play in this competing series?
Well, they probably have a non-compete. That's what I'm saying. It's too early to tell. There's more questions than there are answers so far. I haven't heard from the commissioner. He's been pretty quiet recently, and I'm sure that's because of legal issues. So I just don't know the answers to a lot of these questions. And I'm sure over the next couple months, we'll get more from the tour on, hey, there's a reason we said if you leave, you're suspended, and there's a lifetime ban, and all of that that comes with probably like a non-compete and legal issues. And then obviously him leaving RBC, there's probably a breach of contract there. And it's just going to be interesting. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I see both sides for sure.
Well, the only thing I can add to that from the RBC standpoint is I know they've come out and said that Dustin Johnson and Graham McDowell no longer affiliated. They're no longer.
You think?
Right. An obvious. And
Left them
apparently,
hanging with their marquee tournament next week. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would drop him.
and apparently, Dustin Johnson has played in some Saudi Arabian events before and done it without the RBC patch on his shirt for those weeks. So
I've heard that as well.
And I wanted to mention this before too. Like this isn't completely unprecedented that golfers, big time names, get paid a ton of money just to go play, to go appear places outside of the PGA Tour. I think where we're unprecedented here is the amount of money, first of all, and that they've organized this series of events to pretty much compete against the PGA Tour and try to lure these guys in. You know, what was it, a couple of years ago where it came out, the PGA Tour was giving bonuses to the big guys who clearly attracted audiences to their events, right? And
I'm sure.
And I think they had to do it because the rumblings of this series were coming up and saying, hey, you guys aren't getting paid what you're worth. This deal that the PGA Tour is basically taking advantage of you so they can make money. Who would have ever thought that Dustin Johnson would be the guy? Like if ever there was someone miscast to be a guy to kind of stand up against the man, right? Isn't just, I would say Dustin Johnson would be the last guy I would ever expect to be kind of the spokesman for the little guy standing up to the PGA Tour, and how he handles this publicly will be fascinating. Kind of you mentioned like what he chooses to say about it, which I would imagine would be very little, right? But
yeah, if you know DJ, it'll be very little.
Right. It's just so fascinating on so many levels, and
it is.
Man, then the duration, like how this ends up turning out, if this ends up becoming anything, because you mentioned that 42 person field, and ain't that impressive from a golf perspective.
I loved Rory was like, yeah, that's not very impressive.
Right. Which is kind of what has been now set up in golf, right? You got the guys who are staying loyal to the PGA Tour, basically everybody, right?
Yes.
Who is in their prime, on the upswing, for sure, or anywhere close to it. I should say anyone that's not Dustin Johnson that's anywhere close to their prime. And then you got international guys who clearly love this opportunity, like Sergio, who didn't mind saying it on the course a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Guys who have a little bit of age on them, like Lee Westwood and Louis Oosthuizen and the whole thing. It makes a lot more sense for them. And then the one outlier is Dustin Johnson.
Yeah, that was the only curveball for sure.
Unbelievable.
The rest of the guys, it made sense. You know, they're not going to be competing with the young guns of Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Rory, Justin, Jordan. So many guys, and I think that's the other thing lost in this is the PGA Tour is so healthy and so talent rich right now. That's where you compete against the best in the world. That's the tour. And so that isn't changing anytime soon.
Yeah, that has always been what it is, right? And now competition comes up. I mentioned, we've seen this in other sports and the whole thing. We've seen owners and players go at it all the time from a financial standpoint in baseball. In football, we've seen lockouts. We've seen it in other team sports. The crazy part about golf is it's so individualized, right? And we've never seen this before. Man, how it all plays out is going to be crazy. And then how we look at it from the Columbia, South Carolina perspective, having seen and known Dustin Johnson and his dad, the Gamecocks, and being a Hall of Famer and the whole thing, or his grandfather, excuse me. It's you couldn't make this up, I don't think, in so many ways, Meredith. How about the U.S. Women's Open and Annika Sorenstam coming back this week? I know
the greatest of all time. I'm pumped up. I'm so excited. Not only do you have the greatest of all time right here close to us at Pine Needles in North Carolina, you've got Nelly Korda, the best player in the world, is an best American golfer, back from injury, so to speak, and so that she's back on this event. You got Lexi Thompson, you got Jennifer Kupcho, you got Danielle Kang, just stellar American players that are going to be playing in our most coveted championship. It's the best and greatest championship in our sport. So it's going to be awesome. I'm excited, and it's for the biggest purse in the history of women's golf. $10 million purse. And to give some context to people, last year it was $5 million. And so it doubled this year. So it's a big deal, trending upward. And then you've got some of the young guns, amateurs that are going to be in the field as well. Some young Americans, like, speaking of local connections, Jensen Castle, who's the USAM champ, is going to be in the field. Anna Davis, who won the Augusta National Women's Amateur, is in the field. And then you've got Rose Zhang, who just won the national championship, who's playing for Stanford, is in the field as well. So some, South Carolina connections, but when the greatest of all time is back in the field, I won't be tuning in and watching her the whole time.
So as you say that, that is the LPGA's version of Tiger right now, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. She's our GOAT.
Wait a second. But without any of the off the course disparaging stuff that Tiger has gone through, right? Like
zero.
Yeah, that
zero
reputation
disparaging.
is pretty pristine.
And it's kind of interesting that we're talking about somebody who is a brilliant on the business side of things as well. She has kept all of her sponsorships since her playing days. And so you'll see her logoed up just like she was when she was playing and winning every championship. She's kept those corporate sponsors and those relationships. And so, she's kind of the model for on the course and off the course for sure. She's excellent at everything she does.
Hey, and I haven't talked to you since, or we haven't talked on the show since the PGA Championship went down. I thought it was fascinating to see so many guys who have not won in the mix.
Yes.
And then you see kind of the, what is he, 27, maybe 29, most, Justin Thomas, right? Grizzled veteran. I think that. And I'm like, wait a second.
29, and he's like been out there forever.
Right. But he comes up and comes through at the end. I thought it was pretty good overall, and certainly a great finish to see the 3-hole aggregate playoff and to see that tee shot on 17 that he hit driving the green and the whole thing. I thought overall a pretty solid second major for the men this year.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you the depth of the PGA Tour right now and how difficult it is to win out there. That JT getting his second major championship, that was a dramatic finish. I feel for Mito. I mean, that's another young talent that people probably never even heard of, but he won on the Korn Ferry Tour. And I mean, that's how good these guys are. They come out and they've got a chance to win majors. That just goes to show you, like we talked about this last time, the depth of the mini tour, the college and junior golf.
But there's one thing to have a chance, Meredith. He didn't have a chance. He was rolling. He was cruising.
He should have won the. Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt, man. And then
but again,
how he handled it, right?
Right.
Everybody saw the tee shot, saw it go in the water, saw the double bogey. I think had to feel bad for the guy a little bit. And then when he comes on the broadcast and is able to kind of to not take himself so seriously and to stand up and handle what happened, I think he earned a lot of fans that day. Mito Pereira,
a lot of fans
looking up for him.
Yeah, he handled it first class, no doubt. That's the way that you would hope that a young player coming up would handle a situation like that, because you don't understand what that feels like until you're in that moment, right? And so he'll learn from that, and he'll be back there, no doubt. That's just how good these guys are. They'll get their opportunities. I think 10 years ago we would have said, man, he's never going to get that shot again ever. You only get one shot at winning a major. But I think these guys are so good that he'll learn from it, and he'll know how to react. Probably hit 3-wood in the fairway when you're leading, things like that. And he'll definitely have another shot at it, I'm sure.
Or he'll be John Van de Velde part 2, right?
Right. I mean, you never know. You never know.
Did you catch any of the match last night? I'm guessing from a real golfer's perspective, that's not something that you go out and see. I watched that thing because I like to see people hit the golf ball like me every now and again. Makes me feel better. I mean, those guys could smoke me in golf. Don't get me wrong. And Aaron Rodgers ended up winning with Tom Brady against Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen. But the match does nothing for you from the golf perspective.
Not gonna lie, I did not watch the match.
Gotcha.
Um,
I can see that for sure. Did you watch
Yeah.
it when the big time guys were involved last time when Tiger and Phil get in there? Or is that
I
golf
didn't.
circus for you? That's golf circus.
A little bit. I mean,
I can see it.
I know a lot of guys prefer to hear somebody mic'd up, which is fun. I mean, I think there should be a little bit of that every now and then. So that it's good for the fans and it's for charity. I mean, I get it, but I'm not gonna sit there and watch. Not gonna do it.
Understood. Totally understood on that one. Hey, looking forward to getting you on again. We'll talk about the U.S. Open from the men's perspective and get some
Yes.
of your picks, because your picks were pretty dead on going into the PGA Championship. So everybody who does the fantasy stuff, who might do the not so fantasy laying a wager or so, I'm sure would love to hear what you have to say going into the U.S. Open here coming up soon.
Absolutely. Love to.
Meredith Taylor, ladies and gentlemen, at Meredith Taylor. You see the handle there on Twitter where you can find her. She's got the new website up and running and the whole thing, and knows a lot more about golf than I do. Can play it and probably win a city championship again coming up soon. I believe she's the defending champion from the women's side of that one, from the Columbia City Championship coming up. So something to keep an eye on, and always love her perspective there. And it's so multi-layered might be the best way to put the Dustin Johnson decision to go to that live series and get massively paid for it. And then you factor in the ties that he has to the South Carolina golf world, not the South Carolina golf world, just South Carolina. I mean, he is one of the most famous South Carolinians out there. Who you got to put number one these days? Maybe Darius Rucker. Behind Darius Rucker, it's Dustin Johnson, isn't it? You guys correct me if I'm wrong. I know Ja Morant and Zion Williamson are way up there as well, South Carolina natives. But just across the board, he's been doing it a long time. Craig says he applied for Masters tickets yesterday. Badges, sir, how dare you? You applied for a Masters badge, not a ticket, as a patron and not a fan. Come on, Craig. You watched all of that match. Mahomes' putter was on fire. Okay, nice work. I didn't watch it all. I watched the last few holes, and Aaron Rodgers ended up sinking a putt to win it, like he seems to do every single year. But I watched the entire conversation those guys had with Ernie Johnson afterwards. It was a 30-minute kind of made-for-TV deal where Rodgers, Brady, Mahomes, and Allen just sit there on chairs, kind of like almost a round table without a table yesterday. And that was pretty fascinating in so many ways. What I took out of it was what I try to keep in mind at these frustrating youth baseball coaches I'm a part of these days, that these dudes, they were asked by Ernie Johnson, when was the moment you realized that you loved football? And the way that he phrased the question, I thought was fascinating. Was there a Pop Warner play or a time where you were playing growing up? And then all those guys to a man didn't say anything involved with football until high school or even college, with the moment that stuck out from them. And Tom Brady said he didn't even play until high school and was a backup quarterback on an 0-8 team. And Aaron Rodgers had to go to junior college because he couldn't get a big-time scholarship offer. And one of the few, if not the only, major colleges that offered Pat Mahomes was Texas Tech. And Josh Allen had to go to Wyoming to play college football. So a fascinating reminder for me that some of the greatest athletes in the world come at it later on in life. They don't specialize at 10 years old or whatever ridiculous number. And the path to stardom in sports a lot of times is a long, slow one or winding one, or however you want to put it. It is not. You got to be the best at your age or you're never going to be anything in sports. It's the exact opposite of that. Let's get another guest in here, shall we? See, the coffee is out, I'm guessing, on the late night TV schedule that Mike Gillespie hasn't been up too long.
Oh, hold on. Wait.
Columbia Sports Director. Uh-oh, what are we showing now? You got PJ Pants you're going to bust out for us? Oh, no, I'm always very leery.
All right. Hey.
Back in there.
How you doing?
You already got the button-down collared shirt on? Or is that a PJ shirt maybe that you slept in?
Oh, God, no. No, this is This is actually the same shirt from last night.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
One of those nights.
It's a long night.
That's good to hear. What'd you think of DJ and the news that came out yesterday?
Oh God.
Like we knew he was going to make the move.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I talked about it a little bit, but I didn't know. I've seen 150. I've seen 125. I saw you post the agent statement last night, basically saying it was an opportunity he and his family couldn't turn down. Before the number was attached, I understood that. I saw that statement and understood where he was coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you would have asked me yesterday, Mike, what the number I thought attached was, I would have said 20 million.
Yeah, sure. That seems like a lot.
But yeah, this
120. I mean, first of all, let's not beat around the bush, right? Like it's terrible. Like
what's terrible?
It's terrible that he's making money from a Saudi prince that's responsible for killing a journalist. So like let's get that out of I mean, like the same people who have funded terrorism for years, like that's okay. That's terrible. However, I can understand from DJ's perspective when you're going to make $125 million. I mean, how can you not jump? Right. And it's not like do we really think the PGA Tour is not going to let DJ back on? Like, I think that they're bluffing, and I think DJ's calling their bluff, to be honest. I really do. Like, the Masters was asked about it yesterday. They have no comment. They're still trying to figure it out, right?
Well, aren't lawyers trying to figure it out right now? I think all the lawyers are trying to make sure that they're covering the mouthpieces on this thing, and that's why you're not going to hear anything until they feel it. But I don't know if they're ever going to know anything because this is unprecedented. It's so unprecedented. You get non-competes and breach of contract and antitrust issues out there. And all this money involved. And as you were saying about the Saudi-backed money, are we saying that all the money coming from the PGA Tour is just beautiful from rainbows and lollipops and all philanthropic?
No, we're not. I mean, these are the same people, obviously, who, didn't let black people play for, 100 years, and they still really don't let women play that often. So, yeah, I mean, like the PGA Tour is not great either. This is just a little bit maybe more tangible and recent, right? Like PGA Tour has a bad history. Golf in general, maybe not necessarily the PGA, so to speak, but golf in general kind of has a bad history. This is much more recent within the last couple years. And I mean, it's not American.
Right. Well, Phil Mickelson had the comments too about the Saudis and basically being bad people and the whole thing, and that goes into it. But I think it was really easy for me to say, Phil, what are you doing here? You can't say that. You can't have that come out, right? Yeah. And then you can't also try to play that series against the PGA Tour to make the biggest buck, or at least be smarter about it, right? Yeah. Don't have that come out in the whole deal. But Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson, I don't know if there could be more polar opposite from a personality standpoint.
For sure. Well, and I mean, look, who knows if DJ even understands, right? Like that, where the money is coming from. I'm sure he does, but like, then again, the guy is pretty preoccupied, and like, it's not like he's super plugged into the world. I mean, he's very much into golf. He's very much into his family, and he kind of lives that sort of lifestyle. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's been made aware. His agent is David is a very intelligent dude. So I'm sure he made DJ aware of some of the optics, I guess, of this. But, sure. At the end of the day, I mean, it's about money, right? Like, that's what it is. If the figure wasn't as high, DJ would be playing the RBC this weekend, right?
But it's not just about money, right? In this case, for Dustin Johnson, it's also about reputation. It's about a loyalty, like you mentioned. It's about patriotism for some people, right? Or whether or not you feel like the money that he's going to be earning now is basically blood money, right? In a lot of ways, there's so many things that go into it, and then there's the freedom part of this too, right? If we're talking about what is and what's not American, absolutely, one of the American ideals is to go out and make as much money as possible, however you can make it.
Absolutely,
and that's what he's doing here.
And I would say, being an American, we can criticize him all we want. I mean, look, I get it, right? Like, I mean, 100 and I mean, I guess you have there 150 million. I mean, I think I would take that from anybody. Like, I mean, seriously, like, I think I would take $150 million from anybody. I'm not going to lie to you, but you know, we can still criticize him because he's made enough money already. And I think that's the part that's hard for me, is like, dude, you're set. Like, you are set for life. They spent like $3 million on their wedding a couple weeks ago.
Well, they being the daughter of Wayne Gretzky, who's also not hurting for money in the whole thing, right?
Right, exactly. Which is, I mean, but again, now they're married, and so they have, you know, they I'm sure they have a joint account. I don't know, maybe.
I would guess the agent would probably advise against that. Maybe.
But I mean,
I understand where you're coming from completely, right? And that's another very American thing that we all do. I think those of us who aren't in that tax bracket, we say, how much is enough? Come on, man.
Sure.
And that goes into the other big story that popped last night about David Tepper filing for bankruptcy with his real estate company, with this mess going on in Rock Hill. So I think this is another multi-layered deal, except you also have then the team sport aspect of this and more of the PR aspect. This is not just one person's reputation, right? It's easy to cast the richest owner in the NFL or maybe American sports as kind of the evil billionaire, right?
Sure.
But
Well,
then it's
he
a matter of what about your fans, your relationship with your fans moving forward and them supporting your team.
Well, and he doesn't come across very well sometimes too. He comes across as a douchebag rich owner, right? Like, he really does. Like, he gives off that vibe. And I think he's very aware of that. And that's kind of his shtick. I mean, when you're worth, what is it? 11 billion or
16.4, I read.
16.4 billion. I mean, like, come on. Of course you're going to act like that. What I want to know, and maybe you know more than I do because you live near there. Like, have we seen any documents from the city of Rock Hill that prove that they held up their end of the bargain on this?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's out there. And the Tepper camp says that doesn't exist because they didn't do it, right? And the Rock Hill camp says, no, we didn't do it because you didn't do whatever you did. So I don't know if there's ever going to be the smoking gun, right?
Sure.
But
I mean,
we do know he's going to be the owner moving forward, right? He's still got to figure out how to get some goodwill, I think, with the fan base, and this is the opposite in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does come across as disorganized and greedy, and it just, yeah, I mean, the optics are pretty terrible. But again, man, like, I do want to know, like, did the city uphold their end of the bargain? And to your point, like, we'll probably never know, but you know, I think that's a big part of this, you know, but you're right. Like, people have jumped on Tepper, and it's easy to do, you know, because when you're worth that much money, it almost feels like and seems like you can sort of just snap your fingers and make it happen. Right. And he probably could.
Absolutely. I mean, what I saw, the number, if he's worth $16.4 billion, then the 0.4 could go away and all of this would be fine. Right. He'd still be worth $16 billion. Something ridiculous like that. But then I got to come back to, hey, man, why would we hold that guy to a different standard than anything else we would do? Right. He got to that point by being a smart business guy. This is the business move to make.
Yeah.
So we can't, I think we're all hypocritical if we're looking at it just simply that way. On the other side of things, hey, man, none of us as Americans like this ridiculous format that has been set up, that these professional owners that have a ton of money already get taxpayer funded stadiums to begin with. They can kind of shop around and see which tax base they can screw over the most to get their stadium built for them. Like, what kind of system is that? Whoever started that, that trend is just awful, I think, in our country in a lot of ways.
Oh, it's absolutely terrible. And if you look at what recent history tells us, right, and research, these owners, what they'll do is they'll go to the city and be like, it's going to be great for the city, you can build around it, blah 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 blah. But those businesses wind up going out of business because there's not enough consistent business to come in. So when you have a business that's right next to a stadium, right, like that might seem cool, but at the end of the day, you're not getting enough consistent business for people to go in and out, especially an NFL stadium where they only play once a week. So, I mean, it's a very flawed concept. And I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is other than having smarter commissioners, who basically say no.
Well, that's the thing about this as well, right? The NFL, I think, as I understood reading the article, is not going to do anything because they really can't do anything because this business isn't connected to the Carolina Panthers. This business is not technically part of the NFL, but we all know the only reason this was happening was because of the NFL and the Panthers training facility and the whole thing. So I would think maybe an ultra aggressive commissioner would come out and say, I don't care that it wasn't right. This is not good for our league. This was not what we approve of. So we're fining them or making them build a community center or whatever.
Sure. So by commissioners, I mean city commissioners, and have better planning, right? I mean, I think that's kind of first and foremost. Is just not, jump at the opportunity to have the Carolina Panthers, in your own backyard. While that might seem cool, it's a very expensive endeavor that ultimately taxpayers have to pay for, and it doesn't look great. And to be honest with you, I think the revenue numbers get fudged a lot. I mean, I can't see some of those revenue projections. I can't see it for what, a practice facility. I mean, like, I get it. There's going to be a hotel there, right? Or there was, but like, I mean, at the end of the day, I just can't see that whole entire project bringing in the amount of money that they said it would.
But they said projected $800 million, and I've heard politicians say very similar things. Like, all right, so you're projecting 800, another one's projecting 400. Like, show us the math on this thing.
Well, exactly, right. And there is none. There is no math, right?
Well, there's a way to do it. I mean, but I think it's a fantasy world. It's like, all right, if every single Panthers player lives on the South Carolina side on the border and pays tax and the whole thing, and then you hold all the state championship games at this practice facility, and they all sell out every single year, and the whole, like, you can work the numbers, but we all understand that those numbers are getting worked, and I agree with you on that. When we read it and we say, oh yeah, they were guaranteed to have an $800 million influx into the local economy. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the question is, I think in my mind, I got David Tepper at the top of the list. Dustin Johnson, I give much more of a pass in this thing than Tepper as I sit here today. Like, because Dustin Johnson to me, he doesn't owe the PGA Tour a ton. Like, no. He's been as valuable to them as it's been to him in a lot of ways.
Sure. I feel bad for the RBC in all of this.
Really? The Royal Bank of Canada?
I do.
That's sucks, where we are in 2022. We're feeling bad for banks.
Listen, 3 months ago, DJ came out and was like, I'm totally committed, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it was bullshit.
No, it was a price tag that changed, right? And now we're supposed to feel bad for a bank that has all the money?
Well, I feel bad for the RBC because it was a partnership that just kind of crumbled immediately.
A business relationship that went bad for one side of the business, right?
I mean, yeah. So, and again, like 3 or 4 months ago, it was, I'm totally committed, blah, 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 blah. And I get it, right? The number changed, but, at the end of the day, like, it's still a business relationship. It's still a partnership that you had. And, he chose to do this the week of an RBC event too. Like,
well, no, the Live series kind of did that, and they probably did it for
sure.
exactly this reason,
But he
right?
could have done this like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, not on the same week. I mean, that to me is just, I don't know.
Not getting out in front of it is an interesting move. A lot like Tepper. Like I said a little earlier, like why wouldn't you come out before somebody digs this up in federal court and say, here's what I'm going to do to try to offset all the damage that has now been done by this failed deal. We care about this area because you got to at least have the perception, don't you? Or is he at such a point in his $16 billion that he just doesn't care at all? Is that what this is? That's what it comes off as.
He's got it. Well, yeah. And I think that but again, that's him, right? Like that's him. I feel like he's going to give off that arrogant vibe. Like no one can touch me. It doesn't matter. Like we'll figure it out. But in reality, I'm sure behind closed doors, he's like, fuck, we need to figure this out pretty quickly because we're not going to have a practice facility moving forward. Or a new practice facility moving forward that we all wanted.
I think what he's got to figure out is he's got to get a coach that can coach and a quarterback that can play quarterback, and then all the issues go away, right? Then your fan base loves you. It doesn't matter what kind of owner you are. If your team wins, you're good.
Right.
So,
Well, Sam Darnold, man.
Yeah, doing that. Good luck with Sam Darnold, right? Good luck coming out of OTAs recently with him being kind of your default quarterback because you couldn't convince Deshaun Watson to come over. You couldn't get Russell Wilson in the offseason. And then you add this to the mix, and I don't think you're making it a more attractive place for guys like that in the future to come, and you're missing out on the big picture in a lot of ways. But
and then you draft Matt Corral.
Right. And good luck at the end of the third round hitting on Matt Corral. Again, I would love to see Matt Corral be a good player. He's fun to watch for me, and he's got a bit of an air and an edge to him as well. It just doesn't seem to equate right now to the Carolina Panthers doing anything in 2022 or doing anything getting towards the playoffs anyway. What about Gamecock football? Latest news, Jalen Brooks back with the team. To me, going to add some depth. But a guy who came in a completely unfair situation, I think, in a lot of ways, that fans thought he might be the savior to an offense that just wasn't working under Will Muschamp, and a guy who's coming up from Division II to begin with at Wingate, a fast guy. He had some opportunities and didn't cash in on them a lot of times, missed a deep ball or two. But at least back with Gamecock football, I think important from a depth standpoint. Now you had the two big transfers in Antoine Wells and Corey Rucker, and I think both of those guys and Jalen Brooks, obviously the wide receiver production needs to improve if Marcus Satterfield and the Gamecock offense are going to roll with Spencer Rattler in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, the depth at the wide receiver position is obviously incredibly important. And Jalen Brooks is a talented guy. I mean, like, let's not forget, I mean, he was a projected starter, right? I mean, a couple years ago. And, it just kind of fell off, didn't have the performance that, 2020, I guess, under Muschamp? Was that the last year that he played? Yeah, 2020. But again, I mean, this is a guy who can fly. And, I'm excited, man. I really am. I think there's a new, I don't know, maybe a renewed love of football, maybe for him under Beamer, and that I think that just goes to show you how well Beamer connects with these guys, right? To be able to get a guy back in the fold who kind of lost his love of football for a while, to get him back, get his confidence back up. I think that's really, really cool, man. And it's we live in this world now where, like, we see college football coaches kind of as, arrogant and really wealthy and blah, 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 blah. But we kind of forget sometimes that these guys are still teachers, at the end of the day, like, and they got into the profession, most of them anyway, got into the profession to teach college kids how to play football. Right. And I think you see that come out in Beamer's personality, and you see that here too, I think, by bringing Jalen back in and getting his confidence back up. I think it's really cool.
Well, the official explanation, I think nothing except a personal matter he was dealing with, right? A personal decision to kind of miss the back half of the season last year. So, interesting to see him back this year, because I feel like a lot of times, most of the time, 95% of the time, if you ever see that type of situation, then that player ends up moving on, especially in the transfer portal age. How about SEC meetings stuff going down this week? You into any of that stuff? I haven't seen anything come out that I didn't expect or that coaches kind of don't have. They basically have to say this time of year.
Yeah. So, I mean, Beamer was asked about the scheduling format. And he didn't really take a stance at all. It was kind of like whatever's best for the SEC, I find it really interesting that apparently pods are off the table or were taken off the table.
Right.
And now they're kind of mulling getting rid of divisions. I know that didn't go through yesterday by the end of the meeting. So, I mean, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they wind up doing with either, the 1-7-3-6 format. And then my question is too, and I'm trying to figure out how they would do this. I mean, tiebreakers is the answer here, but I'm trying to figure out what the tiebreakers would be if they got rid of divisions and they had just 16 teams. What are the tiebreakers for the SEC championship game? Like, what if you had 4 teams with the same record that didn't play each other? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like,
you can't go head to head if there are 4 teams tied, right? That would be
right.
That'd be tough.
Right. So it's like I don't really understand where they would get those tiebreakers from. Maybe it's college football ranking. I don't know. But then again, like, do they want to? They're trying to separate themselves from the college football playoff to begin with, right? So I don't know. I think that's the most fascinating part of all of this is, how do they determine who's going to go to that SEC title game? But I do like the fact that in a 4-year span, this is kind of what sort of sparked these 2 concepts. In a 4-year span, you get to play every single opponent in the SEC. And I think that's great for the sport. I mean, we saw Alabama and Florida play last year. It was a great game in the Swamp. And I think, everybody, including the commissioners, sitting there thinking, like, why don't we do this more often? Like, this is crazy.
Well, the 4-year span would be a home and home, basically, with everyone in the conference. And when you got Oklahoma and Texas coming in, I think it's what you have to do, right? What is it? The Georgia-Texas A&M deal? One of them has not gone to the other one since Texas A&M added to the league. They've only played one time. So I'm all for that as well. I think it just improves the entire fan experience, especially in this time where you have to improve the fan experience in person to get people in your stadium when you're battling HD TV and watching 7 games at one time and the whole thing. My question to you mentioned the Florida-Alabama deal. Being a Florida guy, Mike's so good. He's got 2 degrees from the University of Florida, by the way, guys. He's that smart, that guy. Besides Florida, Georgia, which would be, I think we would all assume if it's a 1-7 deal, that would be the permanent opponent, right?
It would.
Is there anything out there that affects, because from the South Carolina perspective, me being a one-time graduate of the University of South Carolina, 1 degree holder, there's not necessarily 3 rivalries out there, 3 teams that I think you say, yes, South Carolina has to play them in the SEC every single year. Otherwise, it's not going to feel like the SEC.
Yeah.
To me, it would be, if the one thing pops up, I would think it would be Georgia for South Carolina. But if it was Tennessee or Florida, I don't think Gamecock fans are going to get all up in arms that, hey, we can't play Georgia every single year. What is the SEC doing? But there are other schools out there, and Andy Staples wrote an article from The Athletic, I think it was last night, saying if the SEC does anything other than this 3-6 model, they're idiots, because you would lose some traditional rivalries out there, the Auburn, Georgia type, Alabama, Tennessee deals. How is the Florida perspective on this? Because I feel like it's very SEC school specific when you're looking at the schedule, and it didn't even dawn on me until reading this article that other schools would be so all in on the 1 model, the 3-6 versus the 1-7.
Yeah. Well, I think that the 3 from Florida's perspective, from just a history standpoint, would have to be, number 1, it would have to be Georgia. There's no way that the SEC would ever get rid of Florida, Georgia every single year. That's got to be played. I think it's Florida, Tennessee, and maybe Florida, LSU. I guess you could make a case for Florida, South Carolina. That doesn't have as much history as Florida, Tennessee.
Right. But even when you have to say maybe in it, like there's not, then, right? They're just not three automatics that you got to have from an SEC perspective. And being, in the SEC so long, I think that's a good representation. I think there are very few schools out there that say, as we sit here right now, that you got to have three permanent opponents and they got to be these.
Sure. Yeah. And I think so, from a Florida perspective, I think it's those three. I mean, just thinking of the great games, the history. I mean, it's, Florida LSU has gone back and forth for years. Florida Tennessee has been, has historically been a good rivalry. I'm not sure as of late, but and then obviously Florida Georgia. I mean, you go back, I don't even know, 60 years. So, I think it's those three. For South Carolina, I mean, I think Georgia makes a lot of sense, just because I still consider that a big rivalry. I mean, I think South Carolina, it's a big
Gamecock fans too.
Yep. Yeah, it's a big division rivalry. And then I don't, as a closeted Carolina fan, right? I think I would want to get rid of A&M. I don't think we need to see A&M anymore, consistently every single year.
Yeah, that ain't working.
I think we're all done with that. So, and I mean, God, man, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, Tennessee, maybe? Like, does that?
Yeah, I just go simple. I go Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia. If you're going to pick three, that's where I would think. But this is where it gets fascinating to me, because who is going to be arguing on behalf of the fan, and how much does that matter? Like, I feel like that's got to be the commissioner's office saying, we have to have these games, and you're going to have coaches and AD saying, no. I'd rather my permanent opponent be Vanderbilt. Right. I'd much rather my permanent opponent not be these amazing traditions. And I don't know how much schools individually are going to stick up for these rivalries, because it's going to make it that much more difficult for them to win year after year. I think that's what this meeting is basically all about. Yeah. It is conditioning these coaches and athletic directors to say, hey, here's going to be the deal, and you're going to have to get over it. We hear what you guys are saying. Yeah. But ultimately, you got to do what's best for the conference, because they write the dollar amount on the board, I would imagine, in the meeting, and say, here's what it's going to be if we do this. Yeah. You write a much smaller number. Here's what we're going to be. Here's what it's going to be if you guys get your way.
Sure. Well, I think the ADs are all for it, right? I really do. I think the ADs are all for expanding, because, I mean, obviously expanding, but playing a very, very difficult schedule, because it just means more dollar signs for them.
Well, you're talking about 3-6 instead of 1-7, moving up to 9 conference games?
3-6. Yeah, 3-6.
Gotcha.
I think it's coaches that have the biggest problem, because
the ADs also have to be willing to eat a home game every other year, right? If you move to one other conference game, that means you're going to be on the road every other year in that conference game, as opposed to getting the automatic home game, getting the gate from that, paying a smaller school, getting another win in that. I don't know if they're going to be universally for it. And I'm always fascinated too by if you're Alabama's AD, how much does your opinion count? Probably not much compared to Nick Saban, I would imagine, in these meetings.
That's probably true.
If you're Shane Beamer, how much does your opinion count versus Nick Saban or other guy, Kirby Smart right now in the league? That's always the fascinating part to me about these SEC meetings, that, of course, we'll never really know. Or maybe Lane Kiffin will tell us, because he seems to be the only guy that would sneak any kind of good information out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think at the end of all of this, we have to remember too that what pays the bills, right? It's TV. Like, yeah, okay, the gate, sure, but the money is coming from the college football. All of this SEC money really is coming from the college football playoff. Like, consistently, the SEC has gotten more than one team in this playoff. So, you're talking about, how much is that? $20 million per team or something? I don't know. So $40 million that's distributed equally between 14 schools. I mean, that's a shit ton of money. So it comes from TV, these media deals, right? And so if you make the TV guys happy, I mean, that's you're halfway home, right? I think
No
from
doubt.
from the SEC's office, I think that's what they think. It's like, we've got to make our television partners happy. We have to make our media partners happy, and this is a way to do it. ADs, coaches be damned. We don't care. This is what makes us money.
Well, I love too that we're in the era finally of a guy like Nick Saban, a guy like Kirby Smart, who's come out and said, "No, we want to play 9 conference games. We're fine with it. Good, bring them on." And then if you're a coach out there who doesn't do that, which they've typically been like, "No, we're good. We think 8." Then you come off as weak, and that's where Shane Beamer understands, right? He's like, "Hey, we got a tough schedule anyway. If they move it to 9, they move it to 9. If they keep it at 8, they keep it at 8. Either way, we're going to have a tough schedule and the whole deal that you can't really come out right now without looking really weak and say, no, we have to stay 1-7, and that's what we want."
Sure. No, I mean, exactly. But I mean, that, the Mississippi States of the world, right? Like Vandy, like they don't want it. They don't want any part of it, because it's just, it's just going to perpetuate a continuous cycle of Vandy, Mississippi State, Missouri being in the bottom third of the conference, especially with Texas and Oklahoma coming in.
I hear what you're saying, but it's also going to generate that much more money, right? And so maybe not. Maybe, I mean, outside of Vandy, which is always the exception in these SEC talks, we've seen Missouri have plenty of success in the SEC East early on, especially. And Mississippi State, we saw them be number 1 in the country with Dak Prescott at one point back in the day. I get it. It's the exception. But I don't think it's necessarily going to keep those guys at the bottom. I do think, though, what you're saying is very accurate. It's going to make it that much more difficult for them to make that climb. You add one more game to the schedule. But if you're doing it across the board, maybe that other team that wouldn't have overlooked you previously, if they had the chance to play Middle Tennessee, the week before you or the week after you or whatever, maybe it's going to make it that much more difficult for them as well. And you'll see a couple of more signature wins from these bottom of the barrel type SEC teams, and the cycle won't last as long. I don't know.
Could be, but I mean, again, you still have these massive NIL deals, right? And I think between NIL and this new schedule, adding a game, if they do, that's where I see the sort of the bottom dwellers staying put, right? Because not only will they not be able to compete financially now with Florida, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, these massive schools that have a ton of money to put in their collectives. But now you're adding another game to the schedule, which could be Oklahoma. So I really don't see, I don't see the bottom third getting any better in this scenario. I mean, I think financially, maybe, I definitely see that because you're probably adding a better game, but I think with all of these new initiatives, in college athletics as a whole, I think it's been pretty detrimental to smaller schools.
Check out the list that Craig's got here. It's pretty good. This would be, I'm assuming, the 1-7 format, right? If everybody got a permanent opponent, this is how Craig sees it, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And maybe one of the reasons why I would prefer it doesn't happen, right? So Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Vandy, Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, and Oklahoma.
South Carolina, Kentucky. That's a good point. I feel like that might be. From the SEC's perspective, I think that might be a little bit more on the lines of fair. Does that make sense?
No, they're not looking for fairness. They're looking to keep, if they go 1-7, you got to keep the marquee games every single year. And so that's how I see this being done. So at the top of the list would be Alabama and Auburn, right? Mm-hmm. Second on this list, I think, would probably be Texas, Oklahoma, maybe Florida, Georgia, right? Mm-hmm. They'd be 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Then the easy default is Ole Miss, Mississippi State. And outside of that, then you got to cobble it together.
Right.
And A&M and LSU is pretty good.
Sure.
Tennessee and Vandy, just by proximity, is pretty good. Missouri, Arkansas, kind of by default. And then I think that kind of by default leaves South Carolina and Kentucky. But you're talking about fairness, I think Gamecock fans will be okay with that. I think Kentucky fans will be okay with that. If you're talking, I mean, traditionally, those two teams have been pretty close in the SEC East through the years.
And they've played good games. I mean, that's the thing too. Like, the South Carolina Kentucky game is normally pretty good. So, I mean, I could definitely see that. But I still think we're going to wind up with a 3-6 format. And let's see, that was.
You think that's going to happen, or you hope that's going to happen? Because I hope that happens. I don't know if I think that's going to happen. Troy says he hopes it's going to happen as well, because you get to keep more of those classic rivalries going.
Yeah. I think that's what's going to happen, because again, I think it's about money, right? And they're going to want to make as much money as they can, and it's going to be a better product.
Right. And that's coming more from ESPN, I think, than anything else. Right. I mean, sure, Greg Sankey will come out and say, no, the fans and the rivalries, and it just means more. And that's where what we ended up coming to an agreement on in the room, and the whole thing, the bat phone's ringing, right? ESPN saying this is what needs to happen,
right,
to make sure our money is going to be there.
And again, man, it's no coincidence that ABC and ESPN signed a massive contract with the SEC that goes into effect just 1 year before Oklahoma and Texas join the league. And there's a lot of speculation that Oklahoma and Texas could join the league by 2024 instead of 2025.
Well, I see this all happening at the same time, right? It's not, and it's one of the reasons I think they laid the groundwork here for saying, well, we're probably not going to come to a resolution at these meetings. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. The skeptical part of me and all this says, hey, ESPN had this thing figured out before that deal was signed.
100%.
Right? It was a condition of signing that deal for that dollar amount, that amazing dollar amount, right? Yeah. That this was going to happen, and everything is going to fall into place from that. Yep. So I think first they'll announce, here's what we're going to do. Then they'll announce, oh, by the way, we just figured out we could get Oklahoma and Texas going in 2024. And all of that's been in place. And I will be shocked if it will be until 2025. Because you got that Big 12 system they have planned that for a couple of years, they'll play Oklahoma and Texas and the whole thing. I think they'll have that 1 year weird transition, not this season, but next. And then after that, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in 2023. I wouldn't be shocked, but it does seem like 2024 because of the TV deal.
Yeah.
Makes the most sense for everyone involved at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the SEC is going to want to keep ESPN happy, and they should, because ESPN and ABC are paying a shit ton of money for it. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not going to really matter unfortunately, what Ray Tanner thinks, or what Scott Strickland thinks. I mean, like, it's nice that they all get to sit in a meeting and, go to a hotel in Destin, Florida, for free. I mean, that's great. And sit on the beach and get a tan. That's wonderful. At the end of the day, I really don't think that they have that much of a say. I think it's just, I mean, they have to vote on it. I guess the presidents and the ADs need to vote on it at the end of the day. But I mean, really, we know how this stuff works. Like, you can strong arm ADs and presidents into doing what you want to do if you're the conference.
Well, if you're the SEC, and that has what has helped vault the SEC and the Big Ten to maybe a slightly smaller degree to the top of college athletics, right? The strength in numbers deal. And that vote is hilarious, right? I'm sure, like, all right, now we're all voting. Go ahead and speak up if you're not voting the way we've told you to vote.
Right. It's like that old cartoon. Maybe it was like a Dilbert cartoon. I don't remember, but it's like it's got like a complaints box, right? And someone's putting a complaint in, and underneath the box, there's like a bulldog that's just eating the complaint. It's like, really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just optics, right? Like, we're going to make pretend like you actually have a say, but you really don't, because, I mean, for God's sakes, dude, like, Greg Sankey won't even come out and say that they're not going to break off and start their own playoff.
Right.
Like, what? I mean, like, if that's not the ultimate, just like, fuck you to college football, I mean, I don't know what is. Like, to have the cojones to literally say, yeah, we're thinking about it. It's on the table. It's on the table. You're going to break off from the rest of the fucking world and just have your own, like, that's insanity. So like we think that ads at smaller schools are going to have a say when Greg Sankey doesn't care about the rest of college football. Like I don't buy it.
Well, he's sitting at the power position of the table, right? He's on the dealer button every single hand playing poker in college football. And yeah, what ends up happening with the college football playoff here in the next several years, and then that Texas Oklahoma timing is the most interesting part to me. This 1-7 or 3-6, maybe probably because I'm coming at it from the South Carolina perspective. To me, either one is a plus. And I guess as I sit here, I would rather see one more SEC game. Not I guess. I know. I'd rather see conference teams play one more SEC game because that means more better games for us, right? We'll see better games more often in college football. But just the fact that maybe they're softening us up with the possibility that at least everybody's going to come through every 2 years anyway, or every 4 years is going to come through, then I'm for progress there. But the more I talk about it, the more that seems to be the smoke screen, the 1-7, and then the 3-6. I hope is going to become a reality for college football fans.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, they can't just come out with one solution, right? There's got to be multiple. And again, right, the smoke screen. It's, hey, we got this too, but really, this is the prize right here. Like, this is the one we want you to focus on, the 3-6 format. But
no, York, and I understand what York's saying as well. Then schools get to come out and thump their chest, right? We cared so much about you as fans to keep these rivalry games that's what we argued for, right? That's what, and finally, Greg Sankey gave in to our demands, and you get to come off as having a bit of a say in the whole thing. But I think ultimately this is ESPN saying, no, we need more, we need better games more often, and this is what you're going to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's not, listen, it's not a bad model. Like, I think the college football fan in me for years has been saying we need more SEC games. It just makes the product better. And I find myself at the end of SEC play, of course, you had my job before me. You at the end of a college football season, you just want to go and put your toes in the sand for 9 months, really. But at the end of the day, I do find myself as a fan saying, like, okay, we should have one more of these, two more of these, because it feels incomplete sometimes. But I think a couple years ago, the non-conference schedules started to get a little better, right? Which was a step in the right direction. So all of a sudden you had Alabama and Texas, and I'm trying to think of the big ones that start. Obviously Georgia, Clemson, last year, and these massive non-conference games. But at the end of the day, I think I would rather see an extra SEC game, and then have those games in the college football playoff. But
I hear what you're saying. I think we got to figure it out this morning from the SEC meetings. That's why they're all just going to spend time on the beach, mostly.
Yeah,
down in Destin, Florida. Have you done Destin before? By the way, I've never done Destin.
Yes.
What's the scouting
report? Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. White sand and pristine beaches. I would definitely go.
So East Coast or West Coast?
What are we talking about? West Coast.
West Coast of Florida. So Sarasota like-ish. Is that what you're saying? I've done Sarasota before.
Or if you do Crescent Beach. Crescent Beach near St. Augustine.
The famous Steve Spurrier spot.
Yes, where he just sold his he just sold his house, didn't he?
I don't know. I'm not up on the coach's real estate.
Sure he did. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he did. But anyway, yeah. So
okay, let's go to this next step then. York brings it up from South Carolina standpoint. He says he wants to see Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Yeah. He says not sure he would drop in the 3-6. So which one would you take off that list from the South Carolina standpoint right now?
Well, I think So the way the SEC is probably going to work is they're going to get these.
No. I'm not talking about projected SEC.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Mike
yeah.
Gillespie's take.
From me. Okay.
I take Kentucky off that list immediately.
I agree. I would take off Kentucky. I think you got to have Georgia. The history there, the kind of interesting history with Spurrier, like makes the UF South Carolina rivalry pretty cool. And then, I guess Tennessee. I don't know. There's history there too.
I love the proximity of the Tennessee matchup. I still try to think about, all right, what about a relatively easy road trip? And I love how Tennessee travels into South Carolina as well.
Yeah.
To me, this is what conference football should still be about if you can get away with it, right? That's kind of the best of both worlds. I get it that Kentucky's not a terrible road trip, but it's the farthest of any of these. And if you're comparing Kentucky or Florida, who you want to see coming in every year or every other year, that to me is a no-brainer. But I do understand that 1-7 deal, right? That it would make more sense for the SEC to pair South Carolina and Kentucky than it would probably for any other school when you look at the big picture. And it wouldn't shock me if that's what we end up with from that scene.
Yeah. Well, and Tennessee obviously just has a better football history than Kentucky. So, I think that's just a more appealing game to begin with. And then proximity. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, what's lost in all of this is proximity. And I think that should be that should be near the top of the list.
Well, it seems like we might be getting that back a little bit, right?
Yeah.
When you have Texas A&M and South Carolina playing every year, obviously proximity doesn't mean anything. When you have Missouri in the same conference division as South Carolina, that's the whole thing. I'm pretty sure Troy says, well, I'm hearing ACC is going 3-5-5. Absolutely. That was the word out of the ACC meetings. And you got to give the ACC a little bit of credit here. Yeah. I know it's something that we don't do typically in Columbia necessarily, or maybe just in the state of South Carolina or the Southeast from a football perspective. But I think they really got this conversation going. It seemed like they got the positive momentum from a PR standpoint going. And then the SEC is kind of they would look like the weak stance on this thing if they don't end up doing this. You agree?
Yeah, 100%. Especially not a 3-6. Like if they don't go 3-6, I think they're going to look really weak. Yeah.
So from that standpoint, what about the 3 permanent opponents for Clemson? I'm all about if I had my choice, it would be simple. I'd just go at the top of the list in the ACC football. Yep, Florida State number 1. Where else?
I guess NC State.
Mm-hmm. That would be a good one, relatively regional as well, but I don't consider them at the top of the ACC. I got to go more historic here, so I go Miami 2. Then I would go Virginia Tech 3. You talk about the preeminent football programs in the ACC. I put them all in front of NC State, but I'm thinking it probably will be NC State instead of Virginia Tech, or maybe even Miami as well.
It's just interesting because like the Clemson Miami has just been so one-sided recently, right? And I really haven't seen a good Clemson Miami game. But yeah, I think it would probably be for Clemson. I think it would probably be NC State, because that NC State game time and time again is great. That Clemson NC State has been just a really fun game to watch over the last couple of years.
And if you're talking about proximity, Troy mentions Georgia Tech in there. Yeah, this is probably going to be what it ends up being. I'm just saying, if I had my choice with the 3 teams, I would want to see Clemson play every single year. And if they wanted to kind of have Gamecock fans pipe down on that strength of schedule argument that has always been there, then it would be Florida State, Miami, and Virginia Tech. Florida State, Georgia Tech, and NC State, like Troy suggests, I think will probably end up being what happens.
Yeah, I just from Georgia Tech, I mean, it's just so lopsided, but it's probably, but again, from a proximity standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, if I had my way, I think I'd throw Miami in there too. It's just, I haven't seen a good Clemson Miami game recently at all. I mean, I think that's going to change. The other cool part about Clemson Miami would be, the whole D-Rad thing, right? You're always going to have that storyline there. D-Rad, helping Clemson build their football program. And then it seems like he's doing the same down in Miami. So I think from a talent perspective, that would probably be the hardest schedule that Clemson could face is NC State, FSU, and Miami. But yeah, it's probably going to be Georgia Tech. I could definitely see that just from proximity.
Speaking of Dan Radakovich in Miami, I think I saw you retweet the picture of Melvin Ingram with the Dolphins yesterday, maybe on the podium, saying, why wouldn't you want to be there and the whole thing? Interesting to see the former Gamecock in the Dolphins uniform. And his career has been, well, a bit of a ride there. Obviously, signing a massive deal with the Chargers and being an all-pro, and then I think dealing with some injuries and now bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really jealous, though, because he gets to live in two of my favorite places ever, in Miami and San Diego.
That's a good career, man. That's a good. I mean, can you imagine that versus like Stephon Gilmore, who's in Indianapolis this year and was at Buffalo to start?
Oh God, I mean, like that's just, and you know, you talk to these kids, it's like not kids. I mean, not Stephon Gilmore is not a kid, but you know, especially like these younger guys, like right out of college. You know, guy like DJ Wanham, for instance, right? Like he gets the fuck out of Dodge from Minneapolis when the season's over, and he goes down to his place in Atlanta and he chills out there for a while because he can't stand it. Oh, by the way, if you've never been to Minneapolis, it's a really nice town. It was just there for the Final Four, but they have these like things called skyways that connect all of the buildings, right? So you never go outside. Because it's so damn cold.
You say these things like skyways, like they don't exist on Sumter Street with the hospital connecting.
Well, okay,
it's basically what it is, right?
But the difference is literally every building is connected. Right. Downtown, like you can literally walk to every single building and not step outside.
Because you have to. They had to build it that way.
Goddamn cold. Like I was talking to one of the one of the security people at the Final Four, and he was like, yeah, no, you think this is cold, like should have been here 2 months ago, it was 30 below. I was like, nah.
And you were there in April, right? At the beginning of April.
We have choices. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about the Packers too, that you think Green Bay is just filled with NFL people. It is during the season, and then they're gone. Forget about it. They are at the other residents for sure. You mentioned Dan Radakovich. Wanted to hear your thoughts quickly about the Clemson baseball situation. Monty Lee out. What do you think of the news to begin with, and then where do you think they might end up going for his successor?
That's a great question. First, I mean, I love Monty. I mean, I think he's one of the really good dudes in the business, and but again, it's a business, right? And you miss the tournament 2 years in a row, especially with the amount of talent that you have and the amount of talent that he's been able to keep in state has been really impressive. Guys like Ty Olenchuk and Will Taylor, who is a projected first-round pick. But at the end of the day, if you can't win with that amount of talent, then something's going wrong, and you have to make a move.
Baseball stat nerd here. 10th most draft picks in the last 5 years is what Clemson's had.
Wow. That's interesting. I did not know that. The last 5 years. Well, wow.
10th most school from a college baseball standpoint. To me reminds me like the Les Miles situation at LSU, right? Never didn't get as much credit for recruiting the guys as he did criticism for not winning.
Right. Or, I mean, fuck, man. I mean, locally, Will Muschamp. Right? I mean, how many guys did Will Muschamp put in the draft? A ton, right? But at the end of the day, they couldn't win. So there's a disconnect there, and it was pretty clear. So Troy, that's kind of where I was going. You know, Kevin O'Sullivan was an assistant at Clemson. It would be very, very hard for me to believe that Kevin O'Sullivan would leave Florida for Clemson. I was a little nervous as a Florida guy. I was a little nervous that he would leave for South Carolina, and I think there was some talk there. I think there really was, and I mean, who knows whether it was his agent? It probably was, to get him his nice, brand new, shiny ballpark in Gainesville. And I think they used South Carolina as leverage there. But if he turned down South Carolina, I can't see him going to Clemson. if that makes any sense. I mean, South Carolina has a much more rich history in baseball than Clemson does. So, I mean, both have been, obviously powerhouses in the sport, but you're talking about one team that has multiple national championships. So I don't know. I don't see it, but what I do see is his agent using Clemson as leverage to get a nice new paycheck, especially after the run that Florida's had over the last month.
Well, the news that I saw is that there's no chance that O'Sullivan was going to leave. And I think here talking to Stuart Lake yesterday, former Gamecock assistant who is plugged into the coach's world, was talking about still just kind of the bad blood, the bad feeling of the Jack Leggett era ending, not how Jack Leggett guys wanted to, and Kevin O'Sullivan being a Jack Leggett guy. Maybe that's gone now with Graham Neff in and the new AD and the whole thing. And it comes down to what we've been talking about mostly here, Mike, is money and on contract negotiations and the whole thing. I would imagine he's going to use that as leverage too. Well, this is fascinating to me, Mike, what happened this year in the SEC, where the Gamecocks were, I think, a game ahead of Florida at one point, just a few weeks ago. Yeah. And then Florida turns it on. Absolutely. They get guys to step up. They win a bunch of games and they roll to hosting a regional. And we saw Carolina kind of do the opposite down the stretch.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when, the front part of your SEC schedule is just stacked. I mean, you're going Tennessee, Georgia back to back. I mean, so all of a sudden, you lose two of those series and you're looking up in the standings. And the back half was much easier, with Missouri and South Carolina. And, historically, South Carolina, I mean, dude, look at last year. South Carolina swept Florida. So that hasn't been an easy out for Florida by any means. This year it was, obviously, because of South Carolina's injuries. But, I mean, it just so happened that the back half of the schedule was a lot easier and manageable. And I think, Florida's bats just came alive at the right time too. And I don't know why. I have no idea. I've never played baseball in my life, so I can't really explain it. I'm not the guy to ask. But for some reason, I think they were just a lot more patient at the plate and, forcing pitchers to throw strikes. And I mean, I was super impressed with what they did on Sunday too. Clemson actually leads the overall series. Yeah, I mean, but again, I don't know, man. I from a national perspective, I still think South Carolina is looked at as a better program in baseball. But
Troy does come at it from the Clemson perspective, so I can understand that for sure.
But again, I mean, listen, Florida was right there against Tennessee. I wouldn't want to see Tennessee or Florida right now. If I'm in the tournament, I mean, because those are two of the hottest teams in baseball, and Florida had Tennessee right where they wanted. I don't know if you watched that SEC championship game, but I mean, they got a couple runs in the ninth, I think, and then got Judd Fabian up down 8-5 with a runner on first, and the guy blasts it to left, and it was a couple feet shy from going over the wall. I mean, they were right there, and But again, I with all of the momentum that Florida has had, I don't see O'Sullivan leaving. That's a good point about the administration. It's an entirely different administration, but again, like he's still great friends with Jack Leggett. So how would that look?
Right, and you don't have a better opportunity to win championships at Clemson than you do at Florida. Right. That's what it comes down to. So when you mention Craig, the Notre Dame or the Louisville coach, I don't think you have a much better opportunity as we sit here today at Clemson than at Louisville, being in the same conference. But at Notre Dame, I think absolutely you have a better chance to win at Clemson, and how they got job this year, not hosting a regional. That doesn't happen at Clemson or South Carolina typically. Right. I can't think of a single time where it looked like on paper they deserved to host and they didn't. Last year is an example where it went the other way, right? Columbia ends up hosting a regional, even though they're not the number one seed, and Old Dominion comes down. So I would keep an eye on the Notre Dame situation for sure. Are you of the opinion, Mike, that it is going to be a significant proven winner that will get the job as opposed to an up-and-coming assistant coach? You mentioned Tennessee. The Tony Vitella thing clearly worked out for them. Different programs have had success going either way. Texas A&M, the great example of getting the proven guy over from TCU and Jim Schlossnagle this year.
From what Graham Neff said, a couple days ago, he said that they were going to present a very, very good package to somebody.
Right, but what else is he going to say? He's going to say, "Yeah, we're going to lowball him. We're going to trim the teeth out here, guys."
No, but I don't. You don't have to say that, right? Like, you don't have to come out and say. And I honestly, I don't think many ADs do. I mean, I think ADs come out and say, like, this is a good job, blah blah blah.
Well,
but I mean,
what about basically brand new young ADs at a Power 5 place where you got money and you haven't been paying the baseball coach a prime number? I feel like he basically had to do that to make sure that Clemson fans were still going to be in his camp, even if they don't get a big time guy. He can say, "Hey man, we put it out there.
Right.
These guys were just too expensive, and we know this up and coming guy is going to be our guy."
I don't think. See, that's the thing, man. With all of the money that Clemson has, I don't think it's going to be too expensive. And I think it's just going to be a question of whether they are fully committed to making their baseball program great. Because I think they have the money. I mean, how could they not? Like, right. I mean, seriously. Like, I mean, when the football players can literally walk up to a chef and order a filet mignon whenever they want, I mean, they got the money.
No doubt.
But again, I mean, so that tells me they're going to try to make a major push for a national guy. But again, I don't know, man. I would love to see Corbin at Clemson. That'd be fun.
Right. That's another one that was connected to the Jack Leggett era, and you pull him away from Vanderbilt baseball, and Graham Neff would be lauded forever, I think. He would cement his legacy immediately as 38-year-old athletic director, which is kind of blowing my mind as an old dude here. Dude, we went all over the place today. Nice work. Good. Now we're already in.
Yes, sir. No, that was awesome.
I appreciate you popping on.
You're out at 12, right? You're done at 12?
Well, it's the internet. We're done when we're done, right?
Well, I didn't know if you had like packages to deliver or like eighth graders to teach or.
Oh, no, I got little kids. I got a 2-year-old to handle here and try to get down for nap time maybe is next on my schedule right now. What about you?
I'm going in about an hour. We've got a new intern coming in. So
okay, big day.
In the famous words of Tim Hill, it's the blind leading the blind.
Good luck with that. I hope it turns out to be a good one. What would you say your hit rate is on the interns these days at ABC Columbia?
Oh, dude, we've put most of them in the league. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So
solid developmental system you got going.
Great farm system. We're like the Marlins, man. We can't keep them. We just can't keep them. So
that's just a sign of solid mentorship, sir.
We ship them off, but and then I've got to answer phone calls and give them great reviews and recommendations. So
all right. Well, Troy's given you a great review so far with a great show as always. Appreciate the time. Hope to do it very soon. Anthony says very diverse show today. Beautiful. Yeah, apparently the last one that you appeared on, I put diversity there in the name on the YouTube, and I think it exploded. I don't know what that says about where we are these days in the country.
Oh, God.
Something. Yeah.
All right, man.
Time as always, Mike Gillespie, ladies and gentlemen, ABC Columbia Sports Director. Catch him on the 6 and 11 o'clock news all the time there at Mike ABC Columbia on Twitter, where you can find him. That'll do it for today's program. Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent on a Thursday, talking mostly about Dustin Johnson's big deal, David Tepper's big mess, and then a bunch of football there towards the end with some college baseball thrown in that will get going underway from the regional standpoint tomorrow. So pumped up about that. We got the NBA Finals tonight as well. I'm going to try to stay up and watch that thing. I'm hoping we get a good game for Warriors Celtics game 1, and we'll discuss that more tomorrow, how some betting services have the Warriors as the favorite. Some has the Celtics as the favorite. Your opinions might be colored a lot by game number 1, but I'm hoping we get a good one. Hope you thought today's show was a good one. Happy Thursday, everyone. Mark says, be good to each other. Great way to get out, as well as Jason. He's already started his weekend. Good job. Nice work there. Thanks for listening. As always, if you can, subscribe, spread the word, like, comment, and all that stuff with the YouTube page or the social media, however you do it, the podcast deal as well. This is the Thursday edition. Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent.